What's going on YouTube? This is Max coming back at you once again with another video. This time, I'm going to do something a little bit different in this video. Besides doing the comparison between the Sony A90J against the AK flagship Samsung QN900B, the 2022 TV, I'm going to do a video and show some pictures of the QN900B, of some of the good and also some of the bad, before I go ahead and do the comparison between the Sony A90J and the QN900B. Now, if you like this type of content, if you could do me a favor by hitting this like button and that subscribe button, I greatly appreciate it. So the first couple of pictures that I'm going to show is Fantastic Beasts captured on my Sony A7 IV. I want to show the aspect ratio to 16:9, showing the QN900B black bars that I see absolutely no blooming when I'm playing this aspect ratio. And I want to show some of the highlights or one of the brightest scenes of the movie just to demonstrate that there's no blooming when it comes to that 16:9 aspect ratio. And I even pause during the movie to show the Fantastic Beasts title on the Apple 4K TV. This to show there's no blooming in a black box area, just to give viewers an idea, if they're interested in buying the QN900B, what are some of the things and positives about the Samsung. So here's the first picture of Fantastic Beasts, just showing the aspect ratio of 16:9, where I show absolutely no blooming. The next picture is where I paused the movie on my Apple 4K TV, and I do not see any blooming at all on the 16:9 aspect ratio. This is another screen picture just to give people an idea of the QN900B capabilities. And looking at some of the specular highlights and the brightness, I see no blooming at this setting. Same thing here. When I did a pause, I had some questions about this specifically. If I could show some of the title and the black bars, no blooming. This one I captured a couple game footage video. If people are into gaming, the QN900B does a really good job in the gaming aspect, especially when it comes to the detail. And taking a capture of some of the gameplay of Spider-Man Miles Morales, you can get an idea of the detail and the depth when it comes to Samsung QN900B. So in the next picture, I'm going to show Netflix pictures, and this is where I do see blooming, especially when it comes to the narrow black bars. I try to do the best I can to capture this, just to show viewers an idea. So right here, when you have narrow black bars, you have an issue when it comes to the light bleed. Now, I only see this in Netflix content and Disney Plus with the IMAX enhanced version, so, or the aspect ratio. So right here is another good example of Avengers Endgame. So when you have a lot of those highlights, in the example with Thanos, you will see some light bleed at the very bottom. Now, if I switch it to a 16:9 aspect ratio of the same movie, I have no type of light bleed whatsoever. So I just want to give viewers just an idea. When you do pick up this TV, you are going to see some blooming here and there, but it's pretty much up to you if this is going to bother you or not. So another picture that I did capture was from Demon Slayer. This is the latest season. I thought this was pretty good to show. Actually, I think it was amazing to show, especially when it comes to anime and when it comes to blacks. I didn't see any type of blooming whatsoever. So it really comes down to what type of content you feed the QN900B. You may get some pictures that is amazing, and then you may get some issues where I just showed the Netflix certain narrow black bar movies that you're going to have some blooming, or the same thing with Disney Plus movies where you had the IMAX enhanced aspect ratio, you will see blooming. But when it comes to this type of content that you see right now, no issues whatsoever. So it's kind of strange. I think it's something to do with the algorithm of the Samsung processing. And some people mention that it could be just because I have the 65-inch version of the QN900B and they don't see it that much on the bigger sizes. So I'm about to go ahead and show another clip on the Disney Plus showing Thor Ragnarok. Now, in extreme cases, you do see a little bit of blooming at the very bottom, especially when it comes to those specular highlights. But it didn't bother me that much, but I just want to give people the awareness that you do see that when it comes to the narrow black bars. So, but besides that, if you're just looking at just the picture itself, the picture is amazing, especially when it comes to the detail and depth. Comparing it to the Sony A90J, Samsung, and I said this before in my reviews, for the 2022 QN900B, I think this is pretty much one of the most underrated TVs that is not getting enough views for. I know it's an expensive TV, but I think Samsung did a great job for the QN900B, even with all its faults. Now, what I'm about to show next is the comparison between the QN900B and the Sony A90J. So I want people to guess which TV is which. So I'm not going to give the answer out right away. The reason being is because certain scenes you could tell and certain scenes you can't tell. But I'm doing this just to give people an idea or try to figure out which TV is which. But all I can say right now, by looking at these both comparisons, whichever TV you go with is going to be a great TV. Either a Samsung or Sony, both of them are great TVs. I'm just saying right now with the QN900B, Samsung has done a good job. I understand that they have some issues with some firmware with the QN90B and even the local dimming on certain versions of the Samsung mini LED TVs. But if everything get ironed out and get fixed, I think this should be one of the short lists of one of the best TVs for 2022. That's just my opinion on here. But looking at this, especially when it comes to HDR content, the QN900B definitely blows me away when it comes to watching content. So let's begin. Which TV is which? Okay, so you ready to know which TV is which? So on the left hand side is the Sony A90J, and on the right hand side is the Samsung QN900B. Now I just want to preface this, both TVs are amazing. I just want to show the differences between both TVs, and either TV will be a great TV. So if you want to know my opinion, the Sony A90J does a better job when it comes to detail just because of the processing. However, when it comes to the HDR content, the Samsung QN900B, especially when you feed the right content, blows that Sony A90J out of the water. Especially when it comes to those specular highlights. It is something that you have to see in person, that is very hard to describe in words unless you really look at certain content. So when I was watching Aquaman, for example, that movie really brought the best out of the QN900B and even the Sony A90J. I mentioned this before in my previous comparison videos. When it comes to motion, when it comes to detail and clarity, the Sony does a good job. The Samsung is very, very close with their processor, especially on the QN900B. So those are kind of like the things I want to emphasize. The colors wise, I understand people have their preferences, but Samsung has done a really good job for the 2022, especially with their flagship TV. And I want to show these type of comparisons just to give people an idea of how Samsung will stack up against Sony A90J, which is their best OLED TV of 2021, against the Samsung QN900B, their 2022 flagship TV. So those are kind of like the things I want to show in this video. And also when it comes to your use case scenario, both TVs are great. Just like how I said before, it depends on your preference, but Samsung QN900B is coming in very close to the Sony A90J and even just OLEDs in general, except for those issues that I just mentioned in my beginning video when it comes to some of that blooming that I just mentioned, when it comes to Netflix content and the Disney Plus, when the IMAX enhanced aspect ratio. But when you look at 16:9 aspect ratio, the Samsung QN900B does a amazing job. And so those are kind of like the things that I just want people just to understand. And also too, if Samsung were to figure the algorithm when it comes to the narrow black bars, this would be one of the best TVs for 2022 if they could figure that out. However, I do have to, deduct some points when it comes to that. So I just throwing that out there for anyone who is curious. And lastly, if the QN900B come at more of a reasonable price, this is one of the TVs that I will recommend for 2022 if Samsung doesn't do anything to mess up when it comes to firmware and the local dimming issue, and then also too if they could fix some of their QC issues when it comes to DSC. So those are kind of like the other things that I had to throw in and mention when it comes to the Samsung QN900B, but it's a great TV. I'm about to go ahead and end this video. If you could do me a favor by hitting this like button and the subscribe button, I greatly appreciate it. And let me know in the comments if you got the answer right, and what do you think of the QN900B? Do you think this is something that you're interested in buying for 2022, or what other TV are you interested in taking a look at? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, I'll see everyone on the next video. Take care. Bye.